Hello again. I'm back with something that's quite different from what I usually work on. The story on what you see is that I have a Seth Thomas clock here, and I've had it for a couple of years. I was at a local thrift store. I picked up a couple of clocks, and as I'm about to walk out, I see this one just laying on its own without a case. And I asked the guy, how much did he want for this one? And he says, just take it. So I did. Brought it home, hooked up a power cord, discovered it didn't run. So I put it aside thinking maybe one of these days I'll get around to repairing it. Then sometime after that, I picked up a clock that was in this Bakelite case, and it turned out to be unrepairable, but I like the case. These are usually from the 1940s, and this one is in particularly good condition. I like the carving in it. So I held on to it thinking maybe someday I'll get a clock to fit it. And as I was going through a lot of my old parts and whatnot, I realized that this is just about a perfect fit for inside here. So I figured, let me see if I can get this clock running and see if I can fit it into the case. Now, some of the issues that I'm going to have with it are that when I place the back onto the case, it doesn't fit flush because the holes aren't lined up properly. Actually, it'll go this way for the various stems. So I'm going to have to figure out where they go and drill holes through here. Also, the screws that will secure it, I don't have those. They're missing from these three posts here. And I don't have what would be a set knob. So I have a lot of stuff to look for. And again, that's only if I can get this working. As far as Seth Thomas clocks go, the company was founded in 1813. They mostly did wind-up clocks back then. But in 1926, they ended up getting trademark protection for the Seth Thomas brand of clocks. And I don't recall what clock was in here, but there's writing on the inside of this case, and it says the Richardson Company Molded Products, and in Melrose, Illinois. And I looked up their company, and they were founded in 1858, and apparently they're one of the world's largest plastic companies. So let me see what I can do. I'm going to start by looking to open this up and see if I can get it working. One thing I want to point out is that a lot of times if you look at these Seth Thomas clocks, they have date codes printed on the plates in here, and it's hard for you to see, but when I'm reading, it says 4610, which tells me that this was put together in October of 1946. Anyway, let me get set up so I can start taking this apart. I'll try to do a lot of this on my own so it doesn't turn into a lengthy video, but the first thing is I want to remove the rim and the glass and the hands, and there's metal tabs that are holding it in, two here, two over here. I just have to bend them out and then slip this off. So I'll do that on my own and then I'll continue. I've bent back all the tabs. Let's see how easy it is to get this removed. There we go. The glass and the rim. And there's actually two sets of tabs. One held the rim in place, the others hold the dial, but I can't remove that until I get the hands off. So let me work on that next. And let me try to show one weird thing I'm seeing. I figure these hands are just friction grip. I should be able to pry them off. But as soon as I started to try to move them, I see the whole hand assembly sort of is loose. And when I look inside and I wiggle the hands, you see how those gears are wobbling back and forth? I've never seen that before in a clock. Usually this is solidly connected from the top and the bottom. I don't know if that's part of the reason why it's not running, but I'm going to just try to gently pry off the hands, and we'll see what we find. Start with the second hand. That wasn't bad. Very good. For the hour hand, I want to protect the dial. As these clocks go, these hands came off rather easy, so that's pretty good. Now the dial should come out. I may have to bend these tabs out a bit more. I expect it to come out a bit easier. Here we go. One more. All right. We'll put this one aside. This red and white lever, this is a power interruption indicator. When the clock runs, you just see a white spot, which is here in the dial. And when the power is lost, the red drops down, and that's how you know if the power comes back on, that your clock is no longer keeping the correct time. Anyway, let me take a closer look, see how I'm going to start taking this apart, and then I'll continue. In looking this over, and I'll try to show you, there's two ways I can go. I can remove this plate covering the top of the motor. It's just looks like two screws holding it on, or remove the entire motor from these four screws. Actually, one down here too, a third one. But what I'm seeing is someone may have serviced this motor sometime in the past, because it looks like a lot of epoxy glue around the wiring here, which I think got under this plate. It may have glued this plate to the coil. So I might just try to remove the entire motor assembly first. So let me undo these three screws down here. I've removed the three. Let's see if I can lift this up. All right, something's holding it down. There we go. Okay. All right, let me take a closer look now. And what I'm going to do is take some photos of all the arrangement of the gears in here before trying to remove this next plate, which I think is just these three tall screws holding it down, or they're actually kind of like nuts, I guess. So let me work on that. I've loosened all three. They'll come off easily. Underneath each one, I have a metal washer. And what looks like just a rubber washer or spacer or a grommet. And these have a tendency to dry out and get very brittle. All three are stuck to this plate, and I don't want to break them as I remove them. So I'm going to place a little bit of oil around them, see if that loosens it up a bit. So let me work on that. I'm going to use some of my synthetic clock oil. and just put a little bit around each washer here. And let that soak in for a few minutes. And then I'll continue. It took a long time to get these washers off. What I ended up having to do was using an X-Acto blade. I just placed it underneath each one and worked my way around, and was able to get 2 of them off intact. One of them broke, but I think I can still use it. What I want to do now is remove this plate from so we can see the gears underneath. It should lift off without too much difficulty. Oh, okay, this is interesting. Instead of this plate coming up by itself, the whole thing together like a sandwich is coming off. So let's go ahead and remove it. Okay, so here's how we access the gears. 1, 2, 3, 4 nuts holding this plate down. So let me undo those, then we'll be able to get into it. And in the meantime, there's more washers over here. It looks like, okay, rubber ones. 1 stayed on here, 2 here. Let me remove them, put them back on this plate here. So let me work on all of that. When I'm ready to remove this plate, I will continue. The nuts have been removed. Let me zoom in and I'll try to remove the plate. Okay, these 2 arms came out with it. These gears so far are staying here. And I'll take a closer look at this, take a couple of photos just to make sure I know where everything goes. Let me do that, then I'll continue. I'll show you what I have here. On this part, this gear comes off, and this one. And there's a spring attached here, which I'm not going to disturb that. And on this plate, this one comes out, as does this one. This arm comes through. This one stays here. And this gear is not coming out either. Both of these are fixed in place. So what I'm going to do next, clean up the plate just by hand. And the other gears I'm going to place in my ultrasonic with some hot soapy water. I use Dawn detergent. I'm also going to clean this one by hand. I don't want to put these rubber washer grommets, spacers, whatever, in the ultrasonic. I may be able to ultrasonic this. Sometimes I find, though, it removes the red paint from here, so I'll still probably clean this by hand. Once I have everything cleaned and ready, I'll come back and then we'll start the reassembly process. Everything has been cleaned. I want to show how everything gets reassembled. I also have to lubricate all the parts. To do that, I use a synthetic clock oil and place just a very little bit on the pivots at each end of the gear, as well as in the bushings or the holes in the plates. I'll also put some on any kind of a stem that fits inside the center of another gear. But the way these go back together, just to show, and this one I believe fits here. That goes here. And this fits through here. And on this plate, it's just these 2 gears. One here and one here. Then this has to be turned over. And slides through. And then what I have to do is kind of tease the pivots into the holes in the top plate, get everything in the proper position, and then secure it with the 4 nuts. That takes quite a while. Oh, and also this will end up going on here. And then once this is secured, this will fit over it like that, actually this way. And all of this is going to take quite a while, so I'm going to do it on my own, and once everything's back together, I'll continue at that point. You'll see the whole thing fully assembled. And actually, not quite fully assembled. The last thing I'll have to do is place the motor back into position. But anyway, let me get to work on this. I'll try to explain a little of how it goes. One of the things you want to do when trying to reassemble this is, once you've positioned the plate and get it down over the screw posts a little bit, put the nuts on, a couple of them at least, but not all the way tight. Because once you tease the pivots into position, when you go to hold it together, the plate's going to pop up and they'll fall right out. This way, once the nuts are secured here, you tuck these in, the plate moves up, they're not going anywhere. And you gradually work your way across, and then finally securing the last couple of nuts as well. Anyway, I actually have everything into position. Now I'm just going to look to tighten everything up, and then I'll position this piece over it. Everything's back together. The last thing is I have to reposition the motor. That's going to go here. And now I just have to secure it with the 3 screws. I'll do that on my own, and then we'll continue. The motor's back on, and one thing I'm noticing now is when I wiggle the stem here that holds the hands, the gears aren't wobbling back and forth anymore. They're rather stable. So hopefully that was the issue why it wasn't running in the first place. I know that if one of these gears is just off a little bit, these clocks just won't work. Anyway, what I want to do next, reconnect the power cord, and let's see if it runs. I've connected the power cord, and I've also temporarily reseated the second hand. Let me plug it in and turn it on. And it's running. How about that? Very good. Okay, what I have to do next is reseat the dial, the hands, and then the rim and the glass. And let me get to work on that. Okay, I have to bend these tabs back a little bit just to hold it in place. And then I have to position the hands. To do that, to synchronize it, you start with the hour hand on the 12. And the minute hand on the 12. And the second hand you can put anywhere. And if I turn the set stem here, very good. Next, I'm going to clean up the glass, position it, and then place the brass rim over it. That'll take a few minutes, so I'm going to do that on my own. I'm also going to remove the power cord again. It's kind of in the way at this point. Won't need it reattached until I have this back into the case. Everything's back together. What I have to do next is position this into the case. and then figure out exactly where I have to drill my holes in the plate to allow the stems and the screws to pass through here. And to do that, I place a little bit of nail polish on the stem, and then I'll seat the plate over it, and that spot of nail polish will get transferred onto the plate, and I'll know exactly where I have to drill the hole. But before I do that, I need to make sure that the clock is in the proper position in the case. So what I'm going to do is line it up correctly and then just secure it with a little bit of tape at either end so it doesn't wiggle around. If it's off just a little bit, when I drill the holes, the clock's not going to be positioned correctly and I won't be able to correct it. So let me work on getting this secured in here. I also want to show that I've come up with the missing parts that I need to secure this. I found a set knob that'll fit over the stem and a few screws that are going to fit into here, so that I'll just have 3 holes to drill in the plate for these 3 spots. And I even found one of the little grommets that the power cord passes through. I can position this on the plate, give it more of a finished look. And this is so badly scratched up, once I'm done drilling the holes, I'll probably repaint it. Anyway, back to work on marking where to drill my holes. And again, first I'm just going to secure this with some tape to hold it in position. A slight change in plans. It turns out tape really wasn't holding this in position. So what I ended up doing was I used a bit of hot glue and secured it that way. And I think I have it in a pretty good position. So next, I'll put a little bit of nail polish on the stem here. Position the plate. And that's where I have to drill my hole. So let me get to work on that. There are 2 stems here that have to go through the plate for the set knob, and this one controls the power interruption indicator. It lets you reset it. So I drilled 2 holes. And couldn't be more perfect. So now I'm going to position the screws in these 3 nuts and then put nail polish on the heads of the screws and repeat the process. I've seated the 3 screws. We'll do the nail polish again. And here's your 3 spots again. 1, 2, 3. All right, let me work on drilling these holes. I've drilled the next 3 holes. Let me position it over the case. And won't know for sure if they're accurate until I place the screws in here. That's in. Let's tighten them up. There you go. Now it would be easy to say I'm done with the clock, just have to open up to put the power cord on. However, what I want to do is clean up the clock case, try to get a bit of a shine to the Bakelite, and it's very difficult to polish Bakelite. And what I have found is that once it's cleaned up, if I go over it with a couple of coats of spray polyurethane, the clear gloss, it gives it a really nice shine. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove, and obviously I don't want to be spraying polyurethane over the clock itself. And plus, to wash this and clean it well, you don't want to get the clock wet. So I'm going to remove the back, take the clock out of here, and work on cleaning up the case next. I'll also be painting the back cover. I've completed the polyurethane coating, and I think it came out looking really nice. Has a real good shine. I also painted the back plate. And although I don't recall what kind of clock was in here originally, the case reminds me of many I've seen by Telechron. So I took out my Telechron book, and I actually found a clock that looks very, very similar to this. I'll show you. Hard to see, but the carving along here and around the edges, it's identical to what's here. The only main difference is this is a circular dial and this one's kind of a rectangle. But I'm pretty sure this was a Telechron. What I have to do next is I'm going to position the clock back in here. Then I'm going to attach the power cord. To do that, I have to pass my little rubber grommet through here. I want to put a nut in the wire. Okay. This I will connect here with a couple of wire nuts. I'm going to do that on my own, and then I'll continue. I've got the wire attached. I'm going to position the back plate. I have to put the little rubber grommet through the slot here. And have to position the clock just right. Almost. There we go. Okay, next on my own, I'm going to place the 3 screws here, as well as 3 screws along here, and that should complete it. So let me work on that. Everything's back on. The last thing I have to do is to place the set knob. And now I'm going to set this up on my workbench, plug it in, and we'll give it a final look. I have it set up. What you're looking at is a Seth Thomas movement from 1946 that has been placed in a Telechron Bakelite case from 1931. I have it plugged in. Let me turn it on. And it's running. I'm pretty pleased with how this one came out. I hope you enjoyed the video. Any questions and comments are always welcome. And that pretty much wraps things up. Bye for now.